Yes, Stacy, what happened? Where's hurricane? Alright, I forgot to call you back. I got a supermarket.
Nicolette.
Yes, Grandpa?
You saw the river dry?
Yeah.
And at the river, and my grandmother and I flood nearly lost her life.
Really?
How prepared are you for a disaster? Some disasters give warnings, like a storm preceding a flood. Others, like earthquakes, give no warning. Once a disaster happens, the time to prepare is gone, and all you can do is cope. Wouldn't you rather be safe than sorry? Rushing off to the supermarket to secure food is meaningless when your home is unsecure. Crouching between two doorsteps is senseless when where you're crouching is not firmly anchored to its foundation. And no matter how big a vehicle you have, it is no match to a dangerous wall of roaring water carrying rocks, mud, and other debris.
When Rafiq have to go to school and the water is real heavy, I have to take him on my back and jump along those stones there, both back and forward, going to school, coming back.
Terrible when the rain fall. It flood out all around a lake and thing.
Mosquito they run here a lot. Enough night, I want to open my window, but I'm afraid to open it.
Scared yet? Good. Anything you do today will be like making a deposit in your survivability savings account for withdrawal in rough times. Jamaica, as a Caribbean island, is prone to natural disasters. We have suffered the likes of Hurricane Dean in 2007, the extremely powerful Gilbert in 1988, and many others in between. We've all heard horrific stories about the 1907 earthquake that decimated Kingston, and before that, the 1692 quake that struck Port Royal. Both have been etched in the annals of Jamaican history. The Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, ODPEM, knows just how to get you equipped and ready to respond to a disaster. In fact, recently, the National Disaster Management Body went to communities island-wide with a message of disaster mitigation through their Building Disaster Resilient Communities, BDRC project. Simply put, community members were taught how to effectively reduce the severity of a disaster in order to save lives and property.
The BDRC, which is Building Disaster Resilient Communities, is a project that the ODPEM embarked on with the Canadian International Development Agency, starting in 2009. It was focused, as the name suggests, on communities and strengthening of communities as it relates to disaster risk reduction, the whole coping and capacity building of these communities, and so on.
The project, which falls under ODPEM's Community-Based Disaster Risk Management (CBDRM) program, has a number of stakeholders from the national, local government, non-governmental and community levels. These stakeholders collaborated to enable a framework of values, attitudes, governance, resource deployment and practices in which the nation as a whole is able to diminish the effects of a natural disaster.
A big part of looking at resilience, we found to be the whole business of partnership. In disaster management, nothing really happens by any one individual or one agency or organization. And so a big part, the first component of the BDRC looked at strengthening partnerships for disaster risk management. We looked at the enhancing of communities in terms of building their capacities and establishing groups for disaster risk reduction, and looked at identifying and implementing disaster risk reduction projects in the targeted communities.
ODPEM, along with other agency partners, have worked with communities island-wide to develop their local multi-hazard community disaster management plan. With this in place, persons have been able to identify vulnerable and high-risk areas in their communities and have implemented mitigation projects to minimize these risks. Many speak of the transformation which took place.
When the rain set up sometime, Mr. Minusli, because I was flooded out in 2001 and I was living in the school up there for 2 weeks.
When me go shop and the children and me walk, me have to jump on the stone them, cross it and come back.
And most thing in our it still is like landslide and everything there. And you see me when rain fall, Ivan and Dean and everything there. As a juvenile grew up, you see it. House flat and everything there.
This community always suffer from roof damage when we have an hurricane.
This gully taking all the water coming up from off the hills. And then because of that, is that it prevents the children from going across when school is in session and the gully is down.
When the rain fall, it's very difficult to get over, so we appreciate the bridge.
I'm thankful for going.
If they didn't do this, we don't know what will happen a couple of years from now if we have a overflow of the river when it comes down again.
I'm feeling good because I was fretting if hurricane come again, everything will gone.
Over 400 persons in 34 communities selected based on their level of vulnerability have been trained as first responders in community disaster management, emergency response skills, and initial damage assessment. There are also 28 community emergency response teams equipped to undertake preventative, response, and risk reduction action. Each community under the BDRC project is now able to effectively manage and reduce the impact of a disaster. And though the project is complete, the process continues.
It is our intent now to have it ruled out as an ongoing national program for disaster management. So we encourage communities to get on board in the whole business of disaster management. We have templates that have been developed for creating community disaster risk management plan for looking at mitigation issues in communities.
You too can make your community disaster resilient by creating your very own community disaster management and emergency plan.
You can call in or send us an email from our website expressing your interest in certain materials, and that can either be provided to you electronically or you come into our library and utilize that information. And of course, the website has a lot of these templates for establishing community groups and developing your own disaster risk management plans.
It is very important that you take the time to identify the hazards and risks that face your community, to know community members who would be willing to help when a disaster strikes, and to know the resources available. A sustained, developed community leads to a resilient country.
You better prepare for a disaster because it can come at any time.
I'm encouraging all persons to be a part of disaster preparedness and get the knowledge of it, whether from the rural area or urban area. More so the youth, as we will be the future of the country and the world at large. So it will be a very helpful skill and knowledge to have.
It was too late for over 300,000 Haitians on Tuesday, January 12, 2010. The devastating effects of the 7.0 magnitude earthquake that struck the Caribbean country has left a lasting impression on the lives of people the world over and a country fighting to recover. The Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, ODPEM, and its main partners want to work with your community in order to ensure a reduction and management of disaster-related risks. Existing community organizations need to create a special team that draws representation from all areas of the community. The team, known as a Community Disaster Management Group, will form part of the National Zonal Program.
The National Zonal Program is a community-based initiative by ODPEM. It started back in the early 1990s. It's focused on strengthening communities at the local level and establishing various community groupings that look specifically at the issue of disaster management and vulnerabilities at their level.
Hold on. Yes. Yes, my brother. It is somebody's house.
A big part of that is the whole business of training in disaster risk management, first aid, basic search and rescue, things that will allow the communities to, on the first 3 or so days, be able to respond to incidents.
Community organizations should ensure they go out and get the requisite training needed in emergency response skills. There is first aid training from organizations such as the Red Cross and St. John's Ambulance. Initial damage assessment training from Parish Disaster Coordinators or the ODPEM. These Parish Disaster Coordinators also train persons in basic community disaster management. And there is land search and rescue and fire safety wardens training given by the Jamaica Fire Brigade. After the training is done, the group should develop a community disaster risk management plan covering an analysis of the risk or hazards that face the community, prevention and mitigation of anticipated hazards, preparedness and response measures that the community will take to improve their ability to cope and reduce losses caused by natural hazards, public education and the plans for ongoing training, sustainability of the group, possible risk transfer options, and the preparation of a one-year action plan for implementing the community disaster plan.
So it's talking about more than just responding to an emergency and looking more in depth at the issues of risk identification, mitigation, and prevention. And so it's pretty much almost a rebranding of community-based programming for disaster management, and focuses more on identifying the vulnerabilities within communities, working with them in a participatory approach for helping them to identify the risk in their community, looking at strategies that they themselves can implement, and additional training in other areas of disaster management.
You will need to assess the feasibility of the plan. When this is done, activate it and implement disaster risk reduction solutions. For more information, please contact your local Parish Disaster Coordinator or the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, ODPEM, at 906-967-425 or 754-9077-8. You may also visit their website, www.odpem.org.jm.